Hi, and thanks for listening today on the Lights On radio show with Naomi Stockman. I'm your host, and today I'll be covering a topic which is personally relatable for me, but I've also had experience with it, just connection with it in my circles over the last couple of weeks, and I think it's a really important topic to speak about, and that is how we as parents, how mothers and fathers are relating and to each other and to their children during separation, and how we can make that a very much more positive and encouraging process for children rather than making it a bit of a traumatic event in children's lives. You're listening to the Lights On podcast with Naomi Stockman from My Local Hypnosis. Enjoy. And we're talking today about the experience of having a relationship breakdown, how that affects our children and how we can make that process a lot easier. And I just want to say that when we have children, we need to love them the way that they need us to love them. And that can be, you know, we feel the love, but how the love is delivered and how it's received by them can affect their entire life. And so showing up without our baggage is really, really important. It's especially important when parents are separating, when parents are going through divorce, because that's a really stressful time in our life as parents. And that stress, that distress in our bodies and our stress levels going up, and that affects how we interact with each other. It also affects what's going on in our mind about the beliefs that we have about our ex-partner and what they're doing, what they're saying, what we're feeling. It's kind of like a great big melting pot of heaviness and distress. So I hear women and I'm speaking about women because I'm a woman, and I sometimes have heard women refer to the father of their children as, you know, the sperm donor, or, you know, calling them awful names, maybe even telling stories to, you know, in front of the kids or to the kids about what their other parent did. And that is that's just a natural urge for our story, our side of the story, what we've been through, to be witnessed, to be heard. But it is extremely damaging for children to hear either of their parents saying anything awful about the other parent, or third-party people saying awful things about the parents, you know, grandparents also. And you can imagine this, you can turn it around and you can think about how awful it would be if somebody said some awful stuff repeatedly about someone you loved, or even about your child. And our children love us the way that we love them, or maybe in a different kind of way, but their safety, their security, their health, everything relies on us. So there's a very, very instinctual need for safety based around the adults. And when the adult relationship, the carer's relationship with the partner breaks down, it's an extremely traumatic time in a child's life. So each one of us wants to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be connected to our creators, to our parents. And that's part of our identity. So even people look up on Ancestry.com to find out what their ancestry is. You know, am I part, you know, from the Ding dynasty, or am I part Viking? And that has meaning to people. So you can imagine how much the immediate parents that we know and that we've been raised with, and we know that's my mum, that's my dad, how much that impacts our identity. And if you have, say, for example, one parent that thinks that they're the good parent and thinks that the other person's the bad parent, that gets communicated from the parent to the child, that is actually on some level giving the child like a message that, you know, you're not half Norwegian or half Swedish, you're half bad, you're half a hat, or, you know, whatever it is that the words that have been shared. And that's a very, very damaging thing. There is a sort of distress test. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experience test, and it's a scientific thing that they measure these adverse childhood effects, and then they link it and study what percentage of people who have had, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these events, and what their outcomes are in life. And if you've had even one of those adverse childhood effects, you are at an intermediate risk of having sort of unhealthy stress. So that's a really important thing to know. And one of those childhood events, experiences, is actually a parent separating, or the loss of a parent through, death, abandonment, divorce, etc. So you can imagine that if you've got a child, you want to reduce those adverse experiences. And so if there is an adverse experience, you want to resource the child, you want to make that as least traumatic as possible, and you want to do the best you can to make sure that your child grows up into a resilient, healthy, positive adult. And those negative stress, that adverse stress that is caused by those events, they're related to things like heart conditions, obesity, depression, even suicide, and those kinds of things. So it is really important that we keep our children in a bubble of security where their world is safe. So our world can be falling apart. We need to really connect in to our emotional intelligence, and be able to self-regulate our emotions and seek support where the children are not being used as either pawns in the disputes or as part of our support team, because that's also very stressful for a child to have to support their parents through something that's not only distressful for the parents but also distressful for the children. So the best thing that we can do, so what we can do for our children if we are no longer in the original relationship with their other parent, if we've moved on from that and we've got whatever arrangements in place, is that we can make it as pleasant and safe for our children as possible. So one of the things that you can do is speak highly of your ex. I'm not joking. This is really, really important. It's very important to invest into our child's future well-being by speaking highly about their other parent, because remember, this is linking back to their identity. So, when people say, my dad was a guitar player, that's why, I love music so much, or we all link back in our mind at some level that who we are is somehow related to where we came from. So even if you don't particularly personally like your ex, you can find things that you did like about them. You can find positive qualities about them. Like, one of the great things about your dad is that he was very handy. He was always very capable. One of the great things about your dad was that he had a great sense of humour. One of the things that I really liked about your other parent is X, Y, Z, and just sprinkle these into conversation and allow that other parent to have that glory. I know sometimes it feels like it's not fair. It feels like I'm the one that does all the, paying, providing, the grunt work, and the other parent gets to be this amazing person. Now, I've got personal experience with this. So when I was a young mum and I had 2 young children and I separated from their father and there were serious issues, I remember he turned up one day with some $2 plastic watches, and the kids thought he was like a god, and I felt really resentful because I thought, how dare you come in after I, carry the responsibility, and you come in and just turn up like Santa Claus and get, spend $4 and you're the hero in this situation. But what I didn't recognise at the time was that the children need to be able to view the other parent in the positive light. And if they've got not very much to grapple onto, they will grapple onto, look, he does love me, because that is so important, because children relate everything back to themselves. So if a parent abandons them, it's because of them. If a parent is, not with their mother, it might be their fault that they left. It's very, very much did this happen because of me? What could I, is it my fault kind of feeling? And I also remember during that period of time, and I've spoken to my eldest daughter who's 33 about this, and she has brought it up many times, is that one of her, there's what's called an initial sensitizing event. And an initial sensitizing event is actually just an event where the emotional charge in that situation was more than that young person could handle at the time. And it wasn't a terrible, terrible event for an adult to be in. It was just, I was in the house. Her father had come to the door. The screen door was closed. The door was open, and I could see that he was under the influence of substance. And I said, no, you can't come here like this. And he was not quite stable, but he was there sort of pleading, for my daughter to come to the door, come to daddy, come to daddy. And I said, no, don't go. He needs to leave. And that situation, although it didn't escalate into anything else, is a really, really impactful and traumatic event, because a child never, ever feels safe being torn between two parents. Now, what do a lot of people do when they divorce? They tear the child between two parents because they're vying for loyalty. Like, love me, not him. Love me, not her. Whatever the situation is, I want you to be on my side. There are no sides for a child. Even if a child has beautiful step-parents, beautiful other family, beautiful everything, they still need to have that initial connection or identity of who their parent is and how that parent loves them or shows up for them. And a lot of parents don't show up, so they might need to grapple for those straws, etc. And that's really important as the other parent, that we do allow the child to do that. And I was also a foster parent for quite many years, and I did the foster parenting course. And at the time, I didn't quite understand why it was that the fostering system encouraged those parental relationships when parents may not be in good positions. They might have had years of drug abuse. They might have had situations why the children were taken away. The stories might not be too nice. Parents might be incarcerated, etc. However, what became clear to me as the years went by is that identity story, who am I, is so important. And knowing that that the parent does have good aspects, and those good aspects give the child a ability to be able to latch onto those. My father may have been an alcoholic, but he was also a really great painter and used to draw beautiful pictures, and that's why I have this artistic connection. I always wondered why it was that people, say, for example, who have an addicted parent, and then you see the child one child may go one way and be totally anti, and the other child may go into a life of addiction. And what somebody who has been in the space of addiction explained to me is that in order to understand why someone is the way they are, you need to actually go and check out what it is that they're doing. So if I become like you, then I will understand you. So it's very important that as parents, we understand that this need to connect with the parent, with both parents, whether we like the other parent or not, is a really big unconsciously programmed in need. And we don't want our kids connecting through the things that are not healthy. We need them to be able to connect in healthy ways, in healthy spaces. Okay, so the next thing is that we need to be able to communicate with the other parent in a healthy way. We do not want these kids seeing traumatic fighting, battles. There's a really, really big price for having those battles and being in those battles. Last a few weeks ago, I was in a public park having a picnic, and I saw a father who had been estranged from his children. He happened to be at the same park as his children, who he hadn't seen in about a year, and he approached them, and the other family swarmed in and took them away, and there was, crying and screaming and whatever. The children were absolutely petrified. It was absolutely horrific to witness, and as somebody who actually does do therapy with people, it was like I could imagine that that's going to be an event that they're going to need to work through later in life, because that actual experience, both for the father in question and the children, it didn't need to be that way. It could have been a civilized, and even a great experience. It was actually on Father's Day, which made it even worse for all parties. It was actually quite distressing. So if we can do what we can to enable the child to have a relationship with the other parent in a safe way, be able to share positive things about the other parent, even if they are minute like, your dad had such beautiful eyes, your mum was a really good singer. It doesn't have to be, there's always going to be features about a person that are commendable. It really gives that child, know how good it is when someone says something nice about your child. Oh, what a sweetheart, what a cutie, isn't she beautiful? Doesn't she have great eyes? Oh, she's such a clever girl or boy. And, that's the same way that a child feels when someone says something nice about their parent. So really, really important to be able to do that. So from years of mothering across, I've been a mother for 33 years with 4 children and various life experiences, plus I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and trauma therapist. You can imagine that there's a little bit of truth in what I'm delivering, and it's based on feedback from clients, feedback from, people that I've dealt with, and it's really, really important that we all can understand that these things are so impactful in a child's life. So if you can take one thing away from this, that it's healthier to live in a space of forgiveness than it is to reject and belittle and criticize and defend. And you will always be the mother. That's one other thing I want, or the father. That's one other thing I want to cover off is I remember a client that came to me and was concerned about her ex-husband having his new partner, and they're all playing happy families together, and that can cause extreme distress for the other parent when they're thinking about their children having happy families with somebody else that's not them. Is to remember that, when a child goes to visit an aunt or a grandma or somebody else, they don't go to that person. They can have a relationship with that person, but it doesn't replace the mother. It doesn't replace the father. It's an additional relationship. So even if they, like my 19-year-old calls her stepmother mama, and that's fine. It has never made me uncomfortable, or I've never felt anything about that, because I absolutely know that I am her mum, and she can have this relationship with her stepmother that is completely separate. And it's good to know that if the ex has found a partner and that partner is a good addition to the child's life, be thankful. It's really lovely that they've got an additional adult that's there to take an interest in them and support them. And I'm just going to cover off some points here. So, number 1, encourage kids to have a positive internal identity of the other parent. So that means speaking nicely about the other parent and letting them know some good stuff about that other parent. Number 2, allow them to speak about the other parent, even if their beliefs seem unfair to you or untrue, and the other parent entirely does not deserve their credit or admiration or love. Just let the child speak, and that's really, really important. Number 3, speak positively about the other parent, which I've already covered in point 1. Point 4, if the other parent lets them down, hurts them, betrays them, etc., teach your children boundaries and choice instead of judgment. So instead of going into victim anger, like, they're such a bad person and this is because they're this and that and the other, let the child know that they have the choice to how to handle that situation in a positive and constructive way, rather than going into victim mode. Number 5, reframe negatives into positives for the child, because the child doesn't have that capability yet. They're learning all this strategy from you. How they deal with their life in the future is going to be all brought back to what they learned on how to deal with these situations as a child. So you are the teacher. So next one, shape beliefs that support future life. So capability, resilience, positivity, being able to negotiate, being able to be in charge of your own emotions, making choices about how you respond to things. Number 7 is regulate your own emotions. So that means you need to regulate so that your child can be co-regulated. So if you're absolutely falling apart, get yourself out of there, take some time, and then come back in and show your child how to regulate your emotions. Number 8, know that you are not replaceable. Just going back to that story about the step parents, etc. You are not replaceable. You will always have a role in the child's life, and that's where you belong. Step 9, if at all possible, allow time with the other parent. Obviously, that's not always possible, but if it is possible, don't you be the block that's blocking that. Number 10, money is not the child's business ever. What the other parent does or doesn't pay for, who's paying for what financial situation, that's not the child's business. Keep that between you and whoever else is involved with it. So what this does, if you can follow those and self-regulate your emotions and your responses so that you're not coming from that bitter, angry victim mentality, is it will avoid having to take your child to future mental health services. It'll avoid diagnosis and medications, avoid future rehabilitation, avoid future anxiety and depression, avoid future low self-worth and image and identity issues, and it will assist with positive relationship modelling, how the child will be able to understand how to handle themselves in relationship. It assists with emotional IQ and self-regulation and raising balanced human beings. Now, remember that I just want to put a quick disclaimer in here that there's all advice given on this show is should never replace professional advice and does not reflect the opinions or so forth of Alive 90.5. So this is, you can take this information, go do your own research, and that's beautiful. So that's the way that I'm intending this information. So we want to avoid our children getting stuck in the fight, flight, freeze where they're feeling alone or torn between two parents, and that child having to feel like they have to choose. It's really important. So if you've created a life with someone that's not erasable, so you can't just erase people. I know how tempting it is to think, I wish like lightning would strike or something, but the truth is that that's not the case. So if you've got someone in your life that you wish wasn't there, then it's time to maybe just realise that we can make the best of the situation for the positive impact on the child. That's the child's other parent. So being that parent has value in the child's life in some capacity if we can just optimise that relationship and that engagement instead of degrading it and feeling like we have to be in that fight mode all the time. Thanks for joining me today on the Lights On podcast. My name's Naomi Stockman from My Local Hypnosis. Please like and subscribe, and of course, you can look me up on social media.